49ers game day back in action. Dieter and Jake, welcome to all the sickos out there joining us on YouTube, listening on the podcast feed, checking us out on X. I don't know why you would be doing that. Regardless, a lot to get to today. We have Jake's 3-round mock draft.
That's right.
This is the one you've been waiting for. Yeah, mine on Monday. Fun, interesting. Not Jake's. We all are here for Jake's 3-round mock draft. But Jake, we got a little bit of news we got to get to first. And let's start with the man of the offseason for the San Francisco 49ers, Brandon Ayuk. Get this, a wide receiver's being weird on the internet.
So with wide receivers, I wonder, are they coached? Are they coached to go all Twitter weird? Or is it just natural? Like when you play wide receiver, is it just instinctual? Like you know how to separate, you know how to get off the line. You also know how to do some weird subtweeting to try and get more money out of your contract in the offseason. Uh, Brandon Ayuk sort of tweeting at Mike Tomlin. A little weird, but kind of to be expected. And the 49ers are notoriously annoying to deal with in terms of contract negotiations, and then they usually pay guys what they're worth. I don't know. I still stand by the fact that if you trade Brandon Ayuk, you're kind of an idiot unless you get a massive trade haul. I think he is very clearly a top 10 wide receiver in the league, and you could argue he's higher. I thought he was maybe the best receiver in the league last year, at least in terms of efficiency. What he
had some
did,
crazy numbers.
What he did on the amount of targets was unfathomable. Like he's arguably the best separator in the league. So that could be debated. But the point is, he is a top 10 wide receiver, I think, conservatively. And if you trade him for, say, a first round pick, like they did with the DeForest Buckner deal, and they got Javon Kinlaw out of it, they also ended up getting Ayuk by trading down, sort of using that move and leveraging it. I just have trouble, and I know there's a lot of great wide receivers in this class.
Yeah.
But if it's a 1-for-1 deal, I do not really understand it. You could save the money. Sure. That's a very compelling argument. But what Ayuk has done on the field, if you're serious about still competing for a championship, you don't trade him. That's
Correct.
I don't know. In my opinion, I don't see a reason you trade him if you really want to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've made the case that this would be the season to trade Deebo Samuel, but like there is a very fair argument. I agree with the assessment that people have thrown my way, which is that does not help you win a Super Bowl this year. Agreed. I think it gives you maybe a chance to win a Super Bowl in future years. Maybe it extends the window, but you take a hit this season. And the Niners,
Right.
regardless of what we think about their moves, don't believe that to be the case. So they're playing hardball. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk's going to play hardball. We come back to the Denny Carter tweet.
Do you have the Denny tweet?
I do. From 2017. Typical QB tweet. Love my teammates. God is good. Typical running back tweet. Keep grinding. Typical tight end tweet is derp. And the wide receiver tweet is the enemy speaks kindly and holds a knife. And we are clearly in the enemy speaks kindly and holds a knife territory.
It's a perfect tweet. It's one of the most perfect tweets of all time. And every offseason you see it. It's true.
I have the past year or so, it's been pretty clear to me that we're going to rejoin one of the great eras of NFL football, which was the early to mid 2000s, the wide receiver diva era. And with Stephon Diggs and, Brandon Ayuk's getting in on it. He's dipping his toes in the water of wide receiver diva. Like the way that these guys are getting paid, the inability for these guys to get the ball to themselves. We now have a misplaced balance of value and impact. And I think we're going to have some just great wide receiver divas this year. Really looking forward to it. Even if it is Brandon Ayuk, like go to town, buddy. Be a wide receiver diva. You want to be a wide receiver one? That means you got to come in with the attitude of a wide receiver one, which is being flippin' weird. To go off of your point, though, with the, obviously it would hurt your Super Bowl chances. I don't know if he was the best receiver in football last year, but statistically he was astounding. And I think that the main takeaway that I have going into this offseason when it comes to the wide receiver position for the 49ers is this. Ayuk is the one. They're paying Deebo like a one, but Ayuk is the one. And if you need any more evidence, just look at the relationship that Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk had on the field last year, the relationship that they have off the field. I mean, they're not like buddy. They're not really all that similar of people, but they just think the world of each other. That is Brock Purdy's number one target, and Brock Purdy is your franchise quarterback. Like it or not, that's the fact of the matter. The Niners are all in on Brock Purdy, so you need to keep around the guy that he throws the ball most to. Deebo Samuel was the wide receiver one for Jimmy Garoppolo because Jimmy
Right.
Garoppolo's entire game was 2 steps, 3 steps, throw it over the middle, get the ball out of my hands and into the hands of playmakers. Didn't throw outside the numbers, didn't throw really outside the hashes some games. And if you have Deebo Samuel as your number one receiver and George Kittle as your number two, you're doing pretty well if you can play that offense. Brock Purdy's offense is the opposite. He pushes it to the sidelines. He extends plays in the backfield. You need a true X wide
Right.
receiver one if you're the 49ers. You think about the history of the X receiver position and Kyle Shanahan's true offense, which is what they were able to
Yep.
run last year. You're talking Julio Jones. You're talking Andre Johnson, Hall of Famer. Both of those guys will be Hall of Famers. And you're even talking that one year he was in Cleveland, Andrew Hawkins getting like 114 catches. Andrew Hawkins was like 5'9". He's a great
Right.
analyst. Like I really like Andrew Hawkins' stuff, but like it was when else did he do that? The X receiver in a Shanahan offense is the man. They'll pay Brandon Ayuk like the man. This is all par for the course. I think that this is child's play compared to what was going down with Deebo a couple of years ago, to the point where I'm like, just get rid of him. Just dump him. Like this is
Right.
not worth it. So Brandon Ayuk getting in on the action early, but I do believe it is part of the wide receiver repertoire,
I'm
separating,
with you.
using hands at the line of scrimmage, and being weird on the internet.
It's important, and when we get to my mock draft in a sec here, uh, one thing I do wanna talk about is the scenario where they trade Debo, which I
Mhm.
I think they're gonna hold on to him,
I
and the
agree.
scenario they don't, uh, but they're gonna have arguments for drafting a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds regardless. It's a really strong class with a lot of interesting guys. And even if you don't trade either one of them, you could make the case, all right, well, it actually makes more financial sense to trade Debo next year,
Mhm.
get a guy in our system now, sort of hedge against, Ayuk and some weirdness, and maybe we try and force Ayuk to play on the last year. I kind of don't think that's how these things work anymore.
No.
Um, but I think they do have a strong argument either way to draft a wide receiver.
This is a team that has consistently paid top dollar to top players. They're very keen on rewarding guys who they have turned into something, their system, whatever you want to call it. They want to pay those guys, and it will burn them one day. There's no question about it. I see no downside to giving Brandon Ayuk the money that you should give him. And that it takes two to tango. I don't know what Brandon Ayuk's asking for. I'm sure it's top of the market. And I'm sure the Niners would be smart to give that to him because that top of the market's going to keep going up, 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 and up. Um, it's just going to be a song and dance. This is not a franchise
Yep.
tag guy. This is not a guy who needs to prove it more. This is your number one. Figure it
And
out.
and also just an elite blocker in an offense that demands its wide receivers block. And that's probably part of, like, where Ike's coming from. He's like, "I do all this,
Yeah.
like, I have elite production in an offense where there's a million weapons. I
Mhm.
block my ass off, and you're gonna, like, play around and not pay me?" I'd probably be a little frustrated too.
The
And also, it's
Niners,
kinda
the
fun.
Niners also wait until the last second to give those contracts. It should be
Right. They
noted, and I'm
never
not.
make it easy. They try and limit the guarantees. They try
Mhm.
and give themselves ways where in the future they can restructure or get
Mhm.
out eventually.
Whew.
Sometimes they just
You-
can't.
Are you guys interested in some void years? Because do the 49ers love doing that?
Right. They don't really ever create a contract that's just simple, straightforward. And maybe that's why they got knocked for an accounting error and lost a draft pick next year.
Can we talk about that a little bit? There's no way that's an accounting error. No,
It's
that was an
It
accounting
was
plan
way
that they
too
got
harsh of a
busted with.
punishment for them to have, not carried a 1, like, to lose a 5th round pick next year and move 4 spots back, I don't think really matters in
Who
the
gives a
4th
damn?
round, whatever, but to lose a 5th round pick is not nothing.
Correct.
Um,
That's an
and
actual
maybe it's
penalty.
just the right, and maybe it's just the NFL, trying to rule with an iron fist and say, "These are the rules," but it's a harsh punishment that they haven't really enacted before. So I'd really love to know exactly what the error was.
Oh, I want to know so bad. No one will tell me, but we have maintained a positivity about the 49ers because when we first started this podcast, in iteration 1 of 14 now, apparently, we were consistently flummoxed by the fact that the Niners treated the salary cap with such reverence, that they were
Right.
just so buttoned up, and that their books were as clean as a whistle. They always made sense. There was not, and then these past couple of years, they just threw caution to the wind and they went full
Right.
Saints and they said the salary cap is fake and we're going to prove it. And then it's just hilarious to me that the same team that would, mark every cent in their books to make sure they were cap compliant is now the team getting slapped on the wrist with a 5th round pick, so that because their books weren't clean. I just think the irony of that is absolutely hilarious. And you know what? I bet that 5th round pick was probably worth it. Whatever it is they did, I bet it was worth it because you got a Super Bowl window here. You can be cap compliant down the line. Today is the day where you just dare the NFL to hit you again. And
Yep.
I really want to know what they did. I really want
So
to
do
know.
I.
It has something to do with Eric Armstead, doesn't it? It has to. It has to have something to
I
do with
hope so.
Javon Hargrave in the middle and, guaranteed monies. And, maybe it was Latu just getting kicked off the team in training camp and them putting him on the injury reserve. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I think every team in the league, it should be noted,
Right.
could get hit for. But it is just hilarious that the once very buttoned up 49ers are now the rebels of the salary cap and
It's pretty good.
pushing the league. The irony is incredible. All right. We got some rule proposals, and we talked about
Yep.
this, and then there was a 13-minute tangent, and then we came back to it. We talked about this on the last show. First off, hip drop tackle rule proposal. Okay.
I
What do you think?
think this would be a total trying to find a non demonetizable word.
Trust me, we're not making any money. Use whatever word you want.
Clusterfuck is the word I was going for. I have so little faith that the NFL would get this right and enforce this properly. I
Yeah.
just think it's way too much to put on linebackers, and, they're already having so much trouble trying to hit a QB properly and getting flagged
Right.
for nothing at
Yeah.
all. Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to do it the right way. You're trying to go around the waist and not hit guys high, which
At a
is
certain
really
point,
tough
you're
to do.
trying to play tackle football against the greatest athletes on the planet. Like, stuff's
Yeah,
going to
and
go
they only
wrong.
get more and more athletic, and you're having offensive tackles who are suddenly running like 4.8. Like, it's hard to tackle guys, and you're only gonna make it harder on them.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't
Every
think they
quarterback's
need
a dual threat now. I mean, even Brock
I just
Purdy's a
don't think
dual
they need to
threat.
put more on the defense like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get the thesis that it's a play where if it's because the thesis of it is if you're doing it intentionally and you're dangerously dropping the hip as you tackle and there's intent, yeah, don't do that. But how are you going to enforce that? How do you know if a guy is doing it intentionally? How are you going to decide how you're allowed to tackle when you've already tried to dictate that in a way that doesn't really seem to be working? I just have no faith that this would go in and not drive everyone in the world crazy.
Bo Jackson had his hip explode in 1991. That would have been the time to have done it. Like,
Yep.
it's 2024. I think we've missed our window by roughly 33 years in order to fix the hip drop, because I just didn't see it as some sort of an epidemic. It'd show
No.
up a couple of times a season per team, some for you, some for the other team. It just didn't seem like a problem to me. That said, if this rule comes about, well, it was good knowing you, Dre Greenlaw. It was a really fun while it lasted.
Tough. Yeah. I hope it doesn't come into effect.
It
I think
will. It will,
yeah.
because the NFL, like, they'll have to do a vote on it and all, and
They
everyone's gonna
always
be like,
wanna add, like, a safety thing every year,
and then they
just
have to pull it
just
back
to
the next
avoid
year,
right, just to avoid another lawsuit, I feel like. They always
probably.
add, like, another safety rule each year just to be like, "See, we care about our players," and the defense is like, "No, you don't.
No, you're
No,
trying
you
to take
don't."
money out of my pocket every week. That's
Right.
what you're doing. Maybe it is a money-making scheme for the NFL, where it's just like, hey, you know how we can make $50,000 extra every week? We can just fine these defensive players because a
Yeah.
running back is too fast and his job is to tackle them. I mean, it becomes an issue where it's very difficult in theory to tackle somebody from behind. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I'm incorrect in that that's a good thing, but like these dudes are fast as hell and your job is to take them down and you can't go at the collar and now you can't really go anywhere around the waist or below. And so it's like how am I supposed to tackle you other than be faster
Right.
than you? Maybe that is the right thing. Maybe it's a positive thing, all things considered. But I see way too many people around the NFL doing what happened in college, where targeting and all this stuff is there, and those guys don't really know how to work their bodies as well as NFL guys. But like, there's a lot of literal two hand touch in the college game where dudes just shove and they don't tackle. And this is a bigger issue, I think, which is in the NFL today, I see such poor tackling. Certainly in the college level, you
Yeah.
almost see no tackling. And purists of the game, people who really enjoy the game, it bothers us. Like it really bothers us that everyone is so shitty at tackling all the time. And all you're doing is making it more challenging to tackle someone appropriately. And again, I'm not advocating for hip drop tackles. I'm just saying stuff happens. And the notion that, here's another way you can't tackle someone. You can't hit the quarterback now. You can't, tackle anyone from behind now.
Right.
And it's like, here's
Yeah,
what
you
you're going to
can't land.
get.
And you're basically saying defenders cannot land on any player they tackle, which is fundamentally impossible.
So what you're going to get is there's going to have to be a scheme adjustment to adapt to this. And I hope y'all like quarters coverage with plenty of space at the line of scrimmage and Big 12 football, because if they continue to outlaw ways to tackle dudes and continue to outlaw physicality from the defensive side, the only thing you can do is drop back 10 yards and try to keep everything in front of you. And that's
Right.
really shitty football. So I hope they don't. I hope they will. I think they will. I hope they don't. I hope that someone's smart enough to realize that there is a butterfly effect to this, in theory, player safety
Right.
rule, and that it's going to make defense less and less interesting to watch. And I know the NFL wants to be an offensive league, and they've done a really good job, and it helps TV ratings. But there
But also look at
is,
the NBA that's made
Mhm,
it,
mhm.
you get into that territory of we're
You have
only
to have a
favoring
give
the
and take.
offensive player.
There's
Yeah.
a
There
there's a
needs to
re-
be. Right.
when I was training my dog Moose, who refuses to be in the room with me during podcasts, which should tell you something. Um, any sort of audio thing, he's just like, "What are you doing? Who are you talking to?" And he just looks at me with the big droopy moose eyes. He's an 85-pound golden retriever. He's a big dolt. Regardless, he has tight end tweets. To go back to the Denny,
Yeah, he is Moose has big tight end energy. He just gets a drool that wraps around his own nose.
it's
It's pretty impressive.
we got a golden retriever because they wouldn't shed and they wouldn't drool. And this one's like, here's all the hair in the world and all the drool in the world. So, that's how you get to play the game of life, regardless. Uh, when I was training Moose, there was this really interesting tidbit that I found, and it's actually kind of applied to raising my daughter as well, where there is an inherent built in sense of play and fairness, like in the animal kingdom, which is dogs will we'll go to the dog park with Moose, and I swear there's a point here. We'll go to the dog park with Moose, and he'll go and he'll play with smaller dogs, and he can kick most every dog's ass in those play wrestle fights. And he's done it with your dog Tucker, who's much smaller than him,
Oh,
much
yeah.
faster,
Just
and will tire him.
absolutely dominated him.
Right. He'll let Tucker win one out of every four times. And it's just been observed in the animal kingdom, like one out of every three times, one out of every four times, sometimes one out of every five times. They'll let the other party who is smaller and would never win in true one-on-one reps win because they want to continue to play the game. There is an inherent
Yep.
sense of fairness in the animal kingdom. You have to have an inherent sense of fairness between offense and defense. And your NBA point was perfect because you watch it and it looks like the defense stands no chance unless you're Rudy Gobert,
Right.
who, by the way, gets played off the floor in the postseason because they just stretch the floor on him. Like there's just no fairness for defenders
Right.
unless you are the hyper athletic elite. And
Right. And it
you
also
can't take
creates.
away anything more from the defense at the NFL level. It's going to be too
Right.
lopsided. You're going to turn into the Big 12.
Two things. One, love the analogy.
Thank you.
Tucker, when he does win, he gets under Moose and just sort of goes up. Low man wins. Just
Yeah, that's a hip
peak
drop
form.
tackle. It won't count.
It's gonna be outlawed. But the other
Outlawed.
thing about the NBA doing that is that's the reason, in my opinion, every single play. There's other reasons too, but the main
Yeah.
reason that every single play players on both sides are arguing for a
Oh,
foul is because offensive players know, one, they have to flop a little bit
mhm.
and gesticulate to get a foul. That's why Stephen Curry gets a terrible whistle because he doesn't really flop.
He doesn't go to the
And
basket with his arms completely extended,
right.
saying, "Please come across my arms, sir."
And then defensive players are going, I went like this. I didn't do
Correct.
anything wrong. And they're like, well, technically, that is a foul. And they're like,
Yeah.
so what am I supposed to do? And refs are like, I don't know. Up
This
to
human
you.
being
Like,
ran
that's
at
a foul.
full speed directly into your chest. And because you went vertical, but your arms came down at 3 degrees, you're now the
It's
party that
insane.
committed a foul. Like you have to have a balance. I love that we've done some deep NBA analysis on both of our recent pods, but again, I come back to it. Defense is at such a disadvantage in the modern game. If you
Yeah.
take anything more away from them, you are going to get Big 12 football. And that I think is the last thing that the NFL is going to want, because then all you
Right.
need are highlights. Then all you need to do is watch a 7-minute YouTube clip, because that's the way the NBA is consumed today, where you just
Right.
say, okay, what were the coolest baskets? Because there was no
Right.
defense, there was no give and take, there was no conflict in the contest itself that you wanted to feel the ups and downs. It's just all ups and who can have the most ups. When was the last time you watched arena football?
Right. Never. Ne-
I did
when
once.
Jason Lorenzen was a quarterback.
Jared Lorenzen,
Jared,
R.I.P.
sorry.
The round
Sorry.
mound of.
It's
I went. Mike Ditka had a arena football league team in Chicago that played at the Rosemont Horizon.
wow.
Shout out to all my Chicago sickos. And I went with a buddy in high school, and it was 4.5 hours into the game because they stopped the clock after every incomplete pass and after every touchdown, and it was like 63-47 late in the third quarter. It had been 4 hours, and we're like, it's the first time ever in the history of sporting events, because I was pretty hardcore about that stuff, where I'm like, I need to go home. Like
Right.
I'm not hanging around for
I'm
this.
not
Like
I'm not enjoying this.
this sucks. This sucks. You have to have the give and take. So I hope they don't do the hip drop rule proposal, which means they will definitely do the hip drop rule
Right.
proposal. And I'll say this now. Now that we have a little bit more clarity, and I think that they've cut out a little bit more of the pork, I still hate the kickoff rule proposal. Now they could change it quickly and have one thing that would change it. I don't think I like it. I like a lot of the concepts. I feel very good about a lot of it, but at a certain point, they overdid it. They overdid it. Can you run us through real quick, Jake, what the kickoff rule proposal is in layman's terms?
Yes. So the kickoff rule proposal, I don't know if you can pull up what
I'm
the
pulling it up right now.
diagram looks like for those of us
Oh boy.
on YouTube. Effectively, you have a kickoff and you have two teams in basically, I think, 10 yards apart, uh, or 5 to 10 yards apart. And neither one of them can move until the kick returner actually gets the ball. And the tricky part about that, the idea is that when you kick it off like that, and the XFL did it, is that you get more action and there's not the massive run up where guys are tearing ACLs and getting
Mhm.
concussions. And it's still dangerous because it's football and you're still running a mass of people at each other.
But there's
But
effectively
it
a 5 yard
basically,
line of scrimmage.
yes, exactly. And so you get guys, but they're a little tighter together. So it gets a little bit less, chaotic in terms of the run up. And so what you can do is you can have two people back to return. And once the returner touches the ball, then everybody else can move. And
Mhm.
there's a 20-yard from the goal line to the 20-yard
Yeah.
line, a
Sorry, I can't really
20-yard
get this thing any
landing
bigger.
zone. This is where it gets weird, right?
Okay. Where's the
So
landing zone?
kickers, if
This
they
is so
want to
stupid.
kick it through the end zone and have a touchback, you can do that, but it comes out to the 35-yard line. So what that means is kickers are highly, highly incentivized to drop it in the 20-yard landing zone and allow a return. So the proposal would basically allow this rule to go in place for a year, see how it works, and test it out. But uh, that interesting part is like you're kind of outlawing touchbacks.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more strategy involved. And are they going to try and kick it higher? Are they going to allow more returning? Going back to my theory about the 49ers investing
Yeah.
in special teams.
It's a good theory.
And the other thing is if you kick it into the landing zone, say like an aggressive low drive sort of squib kick, and it
Mm.
goes through, I believe it comes out to the 20-yard line.
Why
So
wouldn't you
there
just do that
is
every time?
right, there's an avenue to do that, but I think it's a little trickier but it can't just land in the end zone. Otherwise it comes out to the 35. So I think it's gonna be really weird, and I think to enjoy it, we're gonna have to have a very open mind and see how it works. And I don't
No,
know if they'll
no.
approve it or not. I think it takes 24 out of 32 votes. But I think I like it a little more than you do. But the 35-yard line touchback thing, I think make it the 30, and I'd be a little bit more into it because then it still incentivizes it. But the 35 is I don't know. That's pretty rough.
That's essentially an illegal, what is it called? Illegal procedure, right? Where they bring it out to the
Right,
40 because you kicked it out of bounds on the
right.
kickoff. So now you're making the field significantly shorter. They brought it out to the what? It's 25 now. Is it still?
Yeah,
It's 25. So you got to go 75 yards in order to score a touchdown. That is the typical drive in the NFL is a 75-yard drive. So now you're saying it's a 65-yard drive, and or you get to have more kickoff. Like this is, I
right,
like the hybrid kickoff formation, which, by the way, totally hilarious. If you can see here on YouTube, the hybrid kickoff formation has two returners. And I think that maybe that's something that they're trying to do. So they go, oh, how can we get two returners back there? And I guess the answer is, oh, you have to outlaw touchbacks. And it's
right,
just, it just went one step too far. It's just one step too far. Just keep regular touchbacks. Not everyone can do it, by the way, or move the ball back 5 yards on the kick.
right.
You
I
have
would
everyone
I would
kicking from the
say,
30, and
yeah, I
then
think the
don't
35
outlaw
is too
touchbacks.
far.
So
I
you're
don't
at
know.
you're at the 35 when you kick it. And if you kick it into the end zone, it comes to your 35. That would be a shitty punt in terms of field position. Like if you
Right,
just did the new setup, 5 yards separated, can't go until someone catches it. That's fine. Like I have no problem with that whatsoever. When you add in the touchback aspect of it, it just is a little too complicated. And now you are, instead of saving the kickoff, you're now incentivizing. Now it's like you have to do these kickoff
right.
returns and coverages. You have to do it. So it definitely lends itself to your theory. Because if this passes, you better have some dudes out there on special teams. It's a
Right. The
great
Green
theory.
Bay Packers will not be doing well.
They will be done. It'll be over for them. Though they improved and they still sucked.
Right. The one interesting thing I will say about the 2 returners is, if you looked at the clip I posted of us talking about the rule last time,
Yeah,
you get some reverses, you get some really interesting strategic stuff where guys throw it
you
cross
can run
field
a
and they'll
play.
yeah, they do. So there's more strategy. I would say Kyle Shanahan would not be a fan because he
He
would
doesn't.
prefer to
He doesn't do
believe that
special team
special teams does
strategy.
not exist, which I kinda respect just
Yeah,
from the perspective of, really, what am I gonna spend my time game planning special teams too?
I mean,
So
this is what's beyond me. He has a coach who can do that. But
right,
no, that guy would then take a risk in any way, shape, or form, and that's unacceptable to Kyle Shanahan. Um, by
right,
the way, Shanahan, if they do make this hip drop rule and it's pretty obvious that you can't tackle guys from behind, the Niners would be the first team in the league to be like, we're playing nothing but loose coverage quarters. Like it's just so risk adverse inherently. But again, coming back to this kickoff rule, and then we'll just let it lie and see what happens with the voting. The lineup makes sense. That you can't move until that's great. But to promote kick returns to the level that they're doing it, it's going from 0 to 100, or probably more accurately from like 10 to 95. It's just too much of a leap.
yeah,
If you pull back that touchback and you say, okay, maybe it's at the 30 now, or maybe you just keep it at the 25, then I'm cool with it. If you don't want touchbacks, move the kicker back 5 yards. You've moved them before.
right,
But the notion that now you have to do these, you go full Patriots, Gaskowski, where they just said no, basically coffin corner every kickoff, which the Niners then tried to do with Moody this year, and it worked sometimes and it didn't work other times. Like to have that level of strategy because of the new rule, it's too much too soon. And I would hope that most of the teams in the league see that because the
I'm kinda
and
for it. I think it's a little too much, and I kinda like that it's a little too much.
oh,
I'd like to
man.
see some weirdness, and I'd also like to see some really good teams lose some games in some really stupid ways on special teams, just for the sake of chaos. I'm not saying it's the most logical rule. I think that putting it on
Much.
the 35 is a little too much, but I do love the chaos of it.
Um, it's also on a personal level not ideal because that's when I go to the bathroom during games.
Yeah, I agree. Me too.
And I think that's when most Americans go to the bathroom. If you're smart, you realize after a touchdown, you'll find
Get
out
out of
if
there.
they made the extra point or not. You can just go. You can go about your day. You can get some stuff in. And there's
Oh,
enough
the one
commercial break.
right before the half, before
Oh,
everybody runs to the bathroom when there's, like,
they're going to take the
3
knee,
minutes left after a long drive, just sneak right out of there.
dude. I consume a lot of liquids. I've already taken like 5 sips of my McDonald's Diet Coke that no one makes a better DC, baby, than McDonald's. Dropped Lottie off at daycare, get my McDonald's DC every morning. I don't drink coffee. And so I'll be dead by 80, but it was worth the ride. And
80's not bad.
I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm 6'9", 300 pounds. If I make it to 80, I won. Regardless, a man needs to use the facilities. Ladies definitely need to use the facilities. The ladies' facilities take a lot longer than the men's. We can pee in a trough, and this. Let's be real about this. This rule is anti-feminist because it's not allowing women the appropriate time to get to the restroom. If you really want to
Well
expand
done.
your fan base
Well
into
done.
get more females to love football, and they already do, these Swifties, when are they supposed to go to the bathroom? When are these women who have been diehard fans forever supposed to be able to go to the bathroom? Are you
Right,
going to
we're supposed to all come back after going to the bathroom and be like, "What just happened? There was a
what the
reverse
why
triple
are
option on a kick return?"
why are they on the
Come on.
35-yard line? Did they get a first down? No, no, no. There was a whole thing. I just think it's too much too soon. The first part of it is great. Just do that. And then if you need to add something to it, add something to it. If it turns out, yeah, we were wrong, everyone's just kicking it through the end zone and the kickoff hasn't returned to the game, fine. But the initial conceit of this thing was that they needed to make kickoffs safer, that they needed to make it not just improve, or increase the number of kickoff returns,
Right,
but they also need to make it safer. By just having these guys line up 5 yards from each other, you've done that. You have completed the
right,
mandate, and now what you're doing is you're being like, but now we want to make sure that every kickoff has a return, and it's like,
right.
dude,
It's gotta be safer, but also more fun, and how do we do that?
you can only appease one side at a time. If you need
Yep.
to add it in 2025, this stupid landing zone and fine, add it in a year, but at least give the hybrid kickoff formation a year to see if it works or not, because it might. Teams might end up doing the landing zone shit anyway, regardless.
I think they should just turn it into a rugby scrum where you just
Don't start me on rugby. Don't start me on rugby. Your boy is like way into rugby these days. Six Nations is over. I don't know what to do with myself. That was what I did
alright.
on Saturday.
We're
Okay.
about to lose the people.
We ever had them. Jake, should we
Get into the
dive
mock
in
draft.
to we've made it 33 minutes. That
For those
is,
of you who have stuck with us through this, uh,
first off,
appreciate
Dieter's
you.
point's incredible. Jake's follow-up's incredible. This is great stuff. And if you're
It
not
is,
about
and
it,
if
this
you can't
isn't for you.
appreciate it, then leave.
That's fine. That's fine. We don't need you. We're doing this for us. We love you
Damn
and we
right.
appreciate all the sickos out there. But if this ain't for you, we're not changing for shit.
Right, if you don't
Okay.
wanna hear us, arguing about how the new special teams rule is really an assault on feminism, I don't know what to tell you. You're in the
Listen,
wrong
man.
place.
Listen, man. That's what we're about.
Anyway, mock draft time.
When the hell am I going to pee, Jake? Okay, mock draft time. We are not going to do trades for this
At
first go
least
around.
yeah,
We will, I think next week we will go through the trades in the draft we want to see the 49ers make.
yep,
And then I don't even know if we'll have guys for next week. Because again, we got some run up here and we're going to start
yep,
getting some more. We'll get some people with teams talking and saying, "Hey, we're leaning towards this guy. We're talking to this guy."
right.
We're going to start to get some development in
There's
the
still
draft
some
space.
free agency stuff, not a ton, but there's still some of that left. There's some weird trades to probably go down. There's
Yeah,
a lot of time for
we
weird stuff
are
to go down.
we are still in the theoretical stage of the NFL draft. And so in that, I don't want to, I just want to keep it clean. I just want to
Yep.
keep it clean. Let's go 31, 63-94. Is that the
Yes.
Niners
Yes.
picks?
Or
Okay, so
99. 99, I
99,
believe.
apologies. They lost 94. But let's start with a young man out of Florida State. Florida
Absolute
State.
freak. We got Braden Fisk or Fisky. I'm going to call him Braden Fisk. He is a guy who I believe went to Western Michigan for quite a while, didn't really produce all that well, transferred, I think this is his 5th year in at Florida
Mhm.
State, and this man is, one, incredibly athletically gifted, but has
Tell me how athletically gifted he is. Explain that
he
to me in the audience.
he is, I think he ran a 4.78 at the NFL Combine, but his burst off the line is crazy, and I'm not gonna say he's the strongest tackle in the draft, but he has strength. Uh,
Mm,
he got pummeled there, but, like, this game that he played in the ACC championship against
yeah,
Louisville is
they
one of the
whooped
more
Louisville's
insane
ass.
games the players ever played. He had 9 tackles, 4.5 for a loss, and 3 sacks. He has the best motor I think I've seen on any player I've watched in the entire draft. And in the Senior Bowl, I think when you looked around, you go, "Who was that guy?"
Mhm.
And based on all of, what the prospects that had to go one-on-one in the Senior Bowl were saying, he was the hardest guy to block at the Senior Bowl. He is just an
See it.
absolute freak, powerful, just, like, will run after everything, and, I just don't see anyone else with more of a motor, can really drive. I
Yeah.
think he needs a little bit more discipline in the run game because he can get a little too high sometimes physically and get pushed out of the way when he gets a little too aggressive. But I think he has more than enough strength to disengage from blocks. He can hold up against double teams, and he truly no one else is trying harder. Like he is going after it in a way I haven't seen anyone do.
If you were wondering, this is Harrison Phillips, a player that I really, really liked. And when I watch the motor, I see a lot of Harrison Phillips. Um, and you see three and coach, broad jump's not that great. So then we go to Fiske here. Give me a half moment. And Fiske, oh, yeah, that's what the Niners like. You got the huge 20-yard shuttle. You got the brilliant broad jump. We're talking 100, what was it? That's 117 inches. So like
Yep.
Ruka Row was 116 inches. So we're talking elite of elite with broad jump. Vertical jump is there too. So he's got it in all directions. He's got that burst and he's got a crazy 40-yard dash 4.7.
Right.
So even if he doesn't make the play, he's going to chase after you and probably get to you.
Right.
Now, if they have the hip drop tackle rule, it might not mean anything. But this is a
Right.
guy who just has high motor, high burst, and you watched him in the ACC this year. That's pretty good competition. I wouldn't go and say anything like elite. I think the ACC has fallen off a bit, but this is a dude who just goes, goes, goes. And it's
Right.
interesting that Geno Atkins is a comp for him here. That's a very good comp. Geno Atkins
Right.
was a very good player for a very long
Right, like
time.
the wingspan and arm length, like, I think that matters a little bit more for, like, if you wanna be a long arm, if you're a taller guy and you wanna have long arm technique, I don't really think he needs that.
Not with the
I
burst
think
he
he
has.
disengages really well. He's a guy
Good hands.
who is, like, not really he was, like, on the lower end of draft boards starting the year, was
Yeah.
kinda viewed as a 3rd round, day 2, day 3. He's climbing, and I don't think
31
he's
is a
gonna
little rich. I mean,
yeah,
have you seen him higher than 31 anywhere?
no, 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 no. So here's the thing, and why I think 31. I look at 31, and here's my logic. I've looked at a lot of different positions. I've looked at corner. I'm not totally sold on anyone there. And granted, corner is, I think, the hardest
So hard.
position in the draft to evaluate. It's you. College defenses are weird. They run bizarre, schemes that don't really match up to the NFL level. You just have weird assignments. You don't get great tape. It's harder to see games with corners,
Mhm.
so that's tough. But tackle is the one position where you're like, okay, tackle. I'd want to take a tackle in the first round.
Yeah.
I think I'm having trouble finding a guy who's either the right fit or someone with enough athleticism worth swinging on. I
Mhm.
think There's one guy like Tyler Guyton for Oklahoma. I think he's a little thin and he needs a
He's a
little work in the
project.
run game,
Yeah.
but his pass pro is excellent.
Yes.
And I just think if you're going to invest in a tackle now that early, you want somebody who has high floor pass pro where you're like, okay, he can replace Colt McKivitz. He's got enough athleticism and movement skills to get it in the run game. So that's where I think, but I don't know if Tyler Guyton's going to be there. I also think someone like Amarius Mims. I think those
Mhm.
guys are going to be gone. Now, that's not definite, but
Yeah,
I'm not
we
totally
talked about this
sold.
on the last show. Like, I feel like all the tackles could be well off the board by 20 because there is a drop
All
off
the ones
between
that are
first round
like
guys and second round guys.
right, all the ones that are like big school, big frame, high athleticism. I don't know that they're going to be there. If they
Mhm.
are, sure. I think why you take Fisk here is because what I'm looking at in a first rounder, either you got a guy who's a total like freak project as a tackle, and you're like, okay, his floor is high enough. We believe in Chris Forster to develop them.
Right.
I think what you really want is a day one contributor. And I watch Fisk and I'm like, I know this guy is going to work. I know
Yeah.
he's going to make plays on defense. He's strong enough. He's athletic enough. His motor is high. He's
Yeah.
going to work. Chris Kasurek is going to fall in love with him.
Mhm.
And it's a spot where you go, okay, now we have a freak defensive tackle for cheap for the next
Mhm.
4 years. Whereas like Kinlaw had some knee injuries going into the draft. He had a huge frame. He had trouble with pad level. This guy's, he gets a little tall sometimes,
Gets a little
but
tall. He's
he's
not a tall guy, to be fair.
right. But he's squatty enough that I don't think pad level is something that's going to be nearly the issue it was with Kinlaw. And you just watch him in the Senior Bowl; he was wreaking havoc. And again, my logic is just that if you take a guy at pick 31, do you think he's going to contribute day one? I am absolutely certain this guy would contribute day one. I think he would be effective. I just think he's a problem to defend. And I really, really, really like what he brings to the table. And yeah, he's projected by most to be, second round pick, but I do not think he's going to be there at pick 63.
No, he won't be. He won't be. He's probably in the 40 range. And
Yep.
maybe we get to the
It's over.
point,
It's a little bit of a reach, and it's maybe a trade down candidate.
whatever. I think anything between 20 and 40 is a whole different round. It's like a different
Yep.
class of player, given the way that the draft is now being structured with quarterbacks, anyone who has even remote first round qualities going in the top 15, maybe
Yep.
12, and any offensive lineman that you can see as a future left tackle goes in the top 20. That's just the way
Yep.
this draft works. It's a very high ceiling draft. And I think that there's not a lot of middle class in this draft at the premier positions. So, or at least that middle class has been given a bump to where now, they're just too valuable to be taken in that middle class round. This is a middle class player by draft standards. And that's because you can't say he's going to be a 3 down player to start. He is a situational pass rusher. He is somebody who, let's just be clear about this. I mean, I like Ruka out of Clemson, but this guy Fisk, if this isn't what the 49ers like, I don't know what we're doing here. Like, this is Chris Kasarek's kind of guy. I don't know if I'd really want him in there in the run game, but on third down, second and
I think
long,
he could get there, but I'm with you. I think his run game needs some work. But I just think the way his motor works and the way he fights, like I think he will get better in that aspect.
there's a lot of Harrison Phillips in this guy. And Harrison Phillips was one of my favorite players coming out of the draft. And that you talk about a middle class guy. It, never a bad thing to have a high motor and great athleticism. He played at a premier school. That matters too. I mean, even if it was just for a short period of time, playing at a premier school matters because you're
Yep.
getting high level competition. You don't have to extrapolate as much as some other guys have to, be extrapolated for. So,
And speaking of that,
who do we
my
have at
next pick.
pick
I did not
number?
mean to double down on FSU, but that's
Hey,
apparently what I've done.
you don't really mind. Talk to me about Renardo Green.
Bernardo Green, corner out of FSU. This is going with my I want in my first 2 picks guys who can contribute day one. Like, do they make you better day one? Is this an upgrade at that spot? I think Fisk, I think he is. I think he provides more than like,
He's a
what they're
he's a clear cut number two. So you come in with Malik Collins on first and second down to try to stop the run because he's bigger. I don't know
and
if he,
Collins can he's a pretty good pass rusher too, but I think there's a way you could have like genuinely all three on the field. Brandon Staley, like, he might come up with some weird stuff. I'm
you can
just
go back
saying
to
you
that
need
5-man rush they had last year where Kinlaw was
yes.
actually really effective.
Yep.
And now you
So
have a
I'm
little
just
bit more
saying
depth at DT where you don't have that clear third cut guy.
right. Exactly. And
But Renardo
I
Green looks like a starting number two corner to me.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. I This is him against Malik Neighbors, where he played a hell of a game. Malik Neighbors, I know Marvin Harrison Jr. was sort of the projected number one wide receiver off the board. It's kind of looking like it might be Neighbors. There's some disagreement there about who's the number one. At worst, Neighbors is number two, and he
True.
played a great game against him. Let me just give you a little bit of a breakdown on
This was
Green.
in
He is
August, I believe, or at least
yes.
on Labor Day, so it should be
Early in the
noted.
year,
Yeah.
to be fair. But Renardo Green is a great, great, great press man corner.
Mhm.
75% of his snaps were press man last year. His movement is super fluid where, yes, he played a lot of man coverage and the 49ers probably play more zone than he's used to. But Mooney Ward also took on a lot of that same, he's a press man corner too. And he's played pretty darn well in this system.
Press man corner is
Green,
not an issue in a cover three because you're pressing at
right.
the line of scrimmage, then you're opening up your hips to funnel towards the middle. I mean, it's a technique thing, and you'd like to have
Agreed.
seen immediate translation, but it's a much bigger deal to be able to press at the line of scrimmage than it is to be able to open up your hips and funnel on the second.
Right.
Like a zone corner doesn't mean shit to me at the NFL level because you will
Right.
have to play man to man. And if you're a zone corner, Ambry Thomas, you have a real problem.
Agreed. And the biggest worry when you draft a guy who's in the mold of a press man corner, right, is are they stiff? Do they rely on jamming at the line of scrimmage because they can't compensate in other areas? I don't see that at all with this guy. I see him
No.
as having very, very, very solid athleticism. He's super fluid in his movements, and he could add a little bit more weight. That's one of my major concerns, but he tackles really well for his size. He had
Huge.
17 forced incompletions, 25.8% forced incompletion rate, which is 17th in the nation amongst corners with 100 snaps. And he can play with his back to the ball and track it. Like he plays through the ball in a really, really impressive way. His timing's great. I just think he is a day one starter opposite Mooney Ward. And I'd feel really good about that. And I just think he upgrades your defense right off the bat.
I had Ennis Rakestraw as my first round pick in my mock draft. And it's because, one, I mean, I think we should note how difficult it is to evaluate cornerbacks. We've noted it before.
Yep.
I'll note it again. We'll note it for another month and another year and another decade. Like, it's really, really hard. And Kyle Shanahan has said this a million times. It's really hard to figure out what guys can translate to the NFL level because it's such a different sport outside the numbers. And it's such a wide receiver led sport at the college level, regardless. I like Dennis Rakestraw because I could immediately see the
Right.
tenacity, the punch, the run stopping ability. What he did, a lot of it was on camera. Where Renardo Green, there's a lot of this that's on camera. Like you can see it as the play develops. Really clean, gets his head around pretty well. Not great, but it gets his head around pretty well. Really can play the ball with his back to the quarterback, which is a really impressive trait. Not something a lot of guys
So,
can do.
something Kello Witherspoon could never figure out.
No. There's a lot of corners in the NFL that have lucrative contracts that don't know how to play the ball with their back, with their the nameplate on their jersey facing the quarterback. If you can't do that, you're not going to be an elite player. And I think it brings you a pretty high floor too. Why do you think
Agreed.
this guy's available at 63? What are some of the warts on him?
Size is one of them. I just think I don't know really what the main criticism is of him. There's another I think it's Jerry and Jones. There's
Mhm.
another FSU corner sort of in the same range. I don't really know what the knocks are on him other than he's not huge. He could add some weight, but I think he's a stellar corner. Like when I look at guys
Who's he
that
remind
I
you of?
worry about. Sorry, what was that?
Who does he remind you of?
Ooh, I don't know if I have a good comp for him yet. Uh, it's it's tough because I just think when I look at a guy who you worry about weight and size, it's can they make tackles? Can they come down in the run game? And I really think he can. So I'm not going to say I have no concerns. I think when you play with your back to the ball a lot, more talented wide receivers, and he
Mhm.
played against a ton, but the
Totally.
NFL is going to be tougher and it's going to punish you for that at times.
Mhm.
But I don't know. My belief in him grossly outweighs my concern. I wish I had a comp for him. I
You
don't
want
know.
one?
His size is
I got
is
one.
interesting, but I don't know.
I
I think
he
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 kind of fits
reminds
in
me a
any heap.
lot of Diamador Lenore,
That's a
like a
good point.
lot.
He does have similar size. He does have that feistiness.
Now
I yeah,
Lenore, I think Lenore can play on the outside. I think Lenore would be fine on the outside. I think he'd be your number two corner. You just like that tenacity and the ability to see the field because I think he has
right.
great field vision. You want that playmaking ability closer to the line of scrimmage, closer to the ball. He has a lot of Lenore in him, in my
I don't
estimation.
disagree.
But I think,
I don't
unlike
disagree.
Lenore, he can come in and do it right away. Where
Right.
Lenore, for whatever reason, needed one, he needed until this year to find his true position, but two,
Right.
just to be that number two guy, to beat out an Ambry Thomas, to beat out a Jason Verrett, like it took him until this year. So he was a fifth round draft pick. Like that's not shocking at all. I think that you start at a higher level with this Green fella from Florida State because he's had higher level competition, because he's had much better coaching. It should be noted. I think he looks very
Yep.
well coached. Mike Norvell is as good as
Yep.
anybody. His staff is as good as anybody's. Um, again, just go back to our what was the defensive tackle's name? Sorry,
Braden
the
Fisk.
Fisk. Well, Fisk didn't do squat at Western Michigan, and then he shows up at Florida State, and suddenly he's a game breaker. That doesn't
Right.
make any logical sense, except for the fact that he got really good coaching for a year at Florida State. And don't forget, Mike Norvell was Alabama's number one target when they were looking for a replacement for Nick Saban. He
Right.
got himself some money out of that. And Florida State was an undefeated team. This guy reminds me a lot of Diamador Lenore. And you might say, okay, well, now there's a redundancy there. I don't see a problem with that. I don't see a problem with
I
that at
agree.
all.
I agree. One other thing before I move on to my last guy is uh, the other position I was looking at in the second round, Xavier Legette
Oh,
from
yeah.
South Carolina. He's really good. He's like a freak. And there's a lot of wide receivers. I think him, Ricky Pearsall, he's a little stumpy
I like Ricky Pierce at
armed.
Florida.
Yeah, but he's a
He made some
freak athlete,
catches.
outstanding route runner. And then there's another guy I'm interested in, the UCSF guy, Javon Baker, who's
UCSF, he played
did I say
for.
UCSF? Yeah, he played in San Francisco. UCF, Javon Baker,
Hmm,
who's long, fluid, great
yeah.
route runner, outstanding hands. There's some wide receivers, and the reason I didn't go that route is because one, I think Green is just a day one corner.
Mhm.
And if you don't trade Debo or Ayuk, I think you'd rather make an addition that is more effective from the jump. But when we get into, our next sort of will the 49ers make a trade? If they make a trade, I would say trade Debo Samuel and go get another South Carolina wide receiver in the second round, Xavier Legette. Maybe you have to trade up for him, probably do a
Well,
few slots. I think it
that would
would
be
be
a
worth
good
it.
that would be a good circumstance. And again, this we haven't fully hashed this out, but if you really like Fisk, if you really like him, I think that he's available 10 picks later. And is Xavier Legette is probably available right around the same spot. Take 31 and a team that wants to jump up, maybe get a Michael Penix in
Yep,
that fifth year option, and
exactly.
find yourself in a couple of middle class spots like that. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that if you have the targets. Trading down to get the guy that you want is the NFL draft ideal.
I had the exact same thought, and when I texted you and I was like, "Can we do trades?" What I was thinking of
I know.
is, uh, what I got presented when I did the PFF mock draft is the Chargers trying to get up
Hmm.
for, say, a wide receiver. or if there's somebody left that they're obsessed with. And I think if you can slide down a few spots, draft someone like Fisk, move up a few more slots with that extra ammunition
Mhm.
to go get two guys in a pretty similar range,
Mhm.
like that is a very enticing proposition and one that I think is not out of the question whatsoever. There's also like a question of maybe you want I mean, I think you get more flexibility with when you have a first round draft pick, but there is like something that's appealing about having the 4-year deal rather than, the first time 5th year option and you get to a contract that way. I think it benefits players more than it benefits teams.
Mm.
Um, but I think there's a way the 49ers sort of bridge that gap in both directions, and I think wide receiver is really interesting for him. Now I will get to my third and final selection, the guy who I am least sold on. Uh,
Pick number 99.
Pick number
So
99. Pick number
this is
99, Roger Rosengarten, who
yep,
sounds like he is your
Rowan
friendly
Gardner,
neighbor who's 75 years old. So
Henry
here's
Rowan
the thing with
Gardner.
Roger. Roger is not an anchorer for the most part in pass protection. I think he needs to just add weight and strength,
He's a little lanky.
which is easier said than done. But he is really, really athletic. He's
Mhm.
super physical in the run game.
Lean.
He basically played the role of a blindside tackle with Michael
Mhm.
Penix, which is
That's right, at right tackle. Yeah.
noteworthy.
Yep.
Um, and Troy
On
Fautanu was on the other side.
on the best offensive line in football this year or the year prior. We talked about Michigan on the last one because of Zach Zinter. Michigan consistently has had incredible offensive lines, but that award for best offensive line, I think Washington won it this past season.
If they
Um,
didn't, they were in the mix. That group was stellar. And so, what I really like about Rosengarten is his first step is so quick. When
mhm,
you know, when I look at the mold of how the 49ers have taken, Mike McGlinchey and Colt McKivitz, they want road graders, guys that are physical, that can really work in the run game and get to the second level. I think Rosengarten is elite at that. I
he's
think
got
he's
pop.
great. He pops off the line of scrimmage. So what I don't like, again, the weight, the strength. I really do worry about him anchoring, and I'm falling less and less in love with him the more I watch his pass pro. But at this stage, you're facing a situation where a lot of the athletic freaks are off the board. Maybe there's a guy like Houston's Patrick Paul, who's just a behemoth, still on the board. I think he probably
That's not Kyle's play though. Remember they had a behemoth in Trent Brown and they hightailed him out of there.
right. That's the thing. So I think you either with your tackle approach, you either go early and you take a guy with freak size, freak athleticism, like we talked about with Tyler Guyton, and you just say, I believe this guy can figure it out in the run game with Chris Furster. He doesn't need to figure it out right away because we still got Colt McKivitz, but his
Mhm.
pass pro floor is so high that we're confident in him.
Yeah.
Rosengarten's kind of the other direction of maybe he slides into guard and maybe at that point you just take a guy. I don't really think he can anchor at guard. Some people just do this thing where if a guy's slightly undersized, they say guard. I think he's a
He's not
tackle. His foot
undersized. He's underweighted.
underweight. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the right way of putting it. He's tall
Right.
enough.
His size is okay, but his weight and his strength worry me. But his footwork is really good. He's crazy athletic. He can get out, get to the second level, make blocks in a way that's genuinely very impressive.
Yeah.
And when I just look at like third, you ideally want to get a tackle out of this draft.
Yes.
I think the second round gets really weird where it's total projects like Kingsley or Kieran Omega DJ, guys that are
Mhm.
just like, here's a total ball of clay, but he could
Yeah.
be really terrible. Whereas if you go in the
High floor,
first
high
round, you'd
ceiling,
get a guy who's
or
still a
low
ball of
floor, high
clay, but he
ceiling.
went to a big program. You know more about him.
This guy's got reps
Rosengarten,
on reps on reps. Like you
yep,
know that he can play the position. The question is, can you put some weight on in his lower half? Guy's got skinny legs.
yes, yes, he does.
That's
How do
that's
you
fixable, perhaps.
Yeah. I think if that's the thing, I honestly I looked at the same thing and I was watching some of these Senior Bowl reps. I had the exact thought. He genuinely has skinny legs. But in terms of that mold of being a guy who can be a road grader, all that, He has it. He really, really would work, I think, in this system as a tackle. The only thing is, do you believe in his pass pro enough? Do you believe he can build enough strength? If you don't, maybe you go get an interior offensive liner, a Mason McCormick.
Mhm.
Cedric Van Pran is another guy I thought of in this spot
Ooh,
from
what a
Georgia.
name.
Great spot, great name, just and he played center at Georgia. He has some footwork issues, but he's also athletic, a guy that could be a future Jake Brendel replacement. He
Hmm.
interested me. We talked about Michigan's Zach
I
Zinter,
love
and
Zach
then
Center.
Tanner Bortolini, who
Is Tanner
I think will
Bortolini a day? Is he a day 2 pick?
I think he's a day 3 guy based on what and maybe it's just we don't have enough intel from
Yeah,
front
that stuff
offices.
changes. Yeah.
Right, but I don't know, depending on where like Tanner Bortolini, if he's like a 4th round pick, like
Whew.
that would be a steal in my opinion. I love him, and I think if you think Rosengarten is more of a guard than a tackle, then you just take a guard, you know?
This guy's a tackle. This
I
guy's a
agree.
tackle through and through.
I
And
agree, and I
you
think
mentioned the
3rd round
footwork
value.
issue.
Yeah.
Listen, yeah, okay, here's a rep right now against Michigan. Guy from Michigan. Like he's getting pushed back. But that's pretty good technique with the feet.
Yep.
My thing that I take away when I watch him, and again, we're not in the deep weeds here because it's a pick 99 and all, but skinny legs, no ass, big, strong upper body. This guy's got the
Yep.
swimmer's body. This guy's rocking the curtain buck. When he's got feet that can move like that, you're not worried about the footwork aspect. This guy can
Right.
move. This guy can scoot. What he needs is to be stronger down there so that if someone gets up in his grill, he's not going backwards.
Agreed.
But you have the year. You have a year to work on. And he looks like he's got long enough arms. I think his upper body technique is great. I think his lower body ability is great. It's just a question on if you can get him strong enough down low to be able to hold his ground. That's
Yep.
not a big ask. It's really not a big ask. You're not having to teach anything there. You're just having to build him up physically. And
Right.
Washington, listen, it was a pretty short operation. I think we need to note what Kalen DeBoer did at Washington. He shows up, and within 2 years, they're in the national championship game. Like, they didn't have a lot of time to develop. They did a lot of good transfer stuff.
Right.
They had guys, but Jimmy Lake, the prior coach, it completely bombed out what Chris Peterson left him. Like I love this. I love this upside at 99. I have a hard time not seeing this guy not being usable, even as a swing tackle at the
Right.
NFL level. And now you do get, I think, elite upside because of the athletic ability, because he's strong, because he's good with his hands. If you could just pack on 15 to 20 with leg presses, you're not going to lose that footwork. You're not going to lose his
Just
ability to
force
get to the
feed that
second.
man. Just,
It's not even a force feed. I mean, give him a shot and start having him pump some iron with the foot press.
Yep.
Like it's just not. It's. I say it's not that hard. This is. Let's be very clear about this. Offensive linemen, there are two types, right? There's the fat guys you got to keep skinny, and there's the skinny guys you got to get fat. And there's never, outside of Joe Thomas, there's never been a perfect one. He was a
Right.
skinny guy. He was a skinny guy in true nature, but he was always at the right weight. And he would be drinking,
Right.
peanut butter ice cream milkshakes to stay at it. But he came into the league ready to go in that regard. I don't think it's ridiculous to think that, hey, this is a skinny guy. This guy looks like a basketball player. This guy
Right.
looks like he would be a bitch in center for your rec league team. Like this guy definitely, I don't know anything about him. This guy definitely played high school basketball, and I bet he played it at a pretty high level. The footwork is just awesome. And he's got
Yep.
punch, and he's got a mean streak. And if you can just get him a little stronger down low, oh man, that's it. That's as
It's
good
all
as
there.
anybody you're going to get in this draft. And this is a hell of a top end draft.
And that's the thing is the 49ers really value mobility in their tackles. And there's all of
As well
these
they should.
high there's all these right, and there's all of these high-end tackles in the first round, and I watch a lot of them, and I'm like, they're great specimens, and their pass pro is great. And I arguably think you should maybe go that route of taking a guy who's better in pass pro if you're going to keep investing in Brock Purdy,
Yeah.
protect that side, and just say, all right, well, we'll project that they can get better in the run game.
But at 99, you can't get a ready-made product. You
Right.
can't, because you're not getting it at 20.
Not on the offensive line like that.
You need to be in the top 10 to get Joe Alt, who's the one ready-made product. If you think that some of these other guys are ready-made products, they're going between 10 and 20. I mean,
Right.
even the guys who are legitimate projects, like a Guyton, who has the physical traits and the ability, just doesn't know what he's doing out there. Like, he's going probably top 20. This is a guy at 99 who, maybe I'm just wishfully thinking here. Maybe I just see too much of what I could have been in this young man. Like, I know this body type. I know this body type for an offensive lineman. This guy, and this is a legitimate thing. You have this issue in the NBA where you get guys who are 7 feet tall since the time they were 15 years old or whatever, and they don't actually love basketball. They don't like playing it. It's just the only, here's
Right.
millions of dollars because you're 7 feet tall. Go ahead and do it. Damian Jones, former center for the Warriors, was one of these guys. He didn't love basketball. I don't hold it against the guy. He just had to do it continuously, and he was just good at it. And someone's going to pay you $15 million throughout your career. Like, do it. You can, at age 30, figure out what it is you want to do after that. You have a lot of money to figure that out. So when I watch Rosengarten here come out with crazy pop and is looking to punch somebody, looking to fight, looking like he's got a mean streak to him, that tells me everything I need to know, because his body is not where it needs to be. Because again, he doesn't have the lower half.
Right.
But he wants it.
Right.
He wants it.
you.
He wants to play offensive line. You can get this guy where he needs to be. It might take half a year. It might take a full year. You got that kind of time. And you now don't have the pressure at pick 99 to have him out there immediately.
Exactly. And it's
I love this.
It's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit nicer to develop a guy that you didn't draft in the first round, where you drafted him in the third round and you got two guys who were producing. Let me just sort of close out on my mock draft, just recapping. We got Braden Fisk, a freak defensive tackle out of Florida State, who's just bad out of hell. Plays harder than anyone I've seen, has top end athleticism, will sack the quarterback if you draft him. I don't know how many times, but he's going to get home. He's going to wreak havoc.
He's going to win
After
reps.
that,
he's going to win.
He's
reps.
going to win. He was a menace at the Senior Bowl, really causing problems. Then you've got his Florida State teammate, Renardo Green, corner, who I think is a day one starter. Got a lot of man-to-man experience. I think can fit into zone well. He's got the intelligence, had the coaching, flips his hips really fluidly. Like you said, Diamador Lenore comp. And then Rosengarten, who's a guy you just need to bulk up, let him get a little time in your system, add on some strength and weight in the lower half, and then maybe you'll have a steal of a right tackle. And with all of these guys,
I think he could play left. I think he could.
I think he could too. I think he could too. He looked good over there in some of the Senior Bowl reps he got. And with all these guys, you may be thinking, Jake, aren't these reaches with all these guys based on where they are expected to go? And what I would say is, shut your mouth. No, what I'd really say, is, mock drafts don't really matter at the end of the day. They do. They give you an idea of where you should draft a prospect in terms of how their value is, and if you go, with the Patriots way, and you draft like Cole Strange like 70 spots early, then you're just not understanding value and you're going the wrong way.
Well, that worked out great for the Patriots.
Right. The thing with these guys is they're all close enough to their range that I think it makes sense. And again, if you're going for Fisk, I think you can slide down a few spots and get a little value there and still get him. And then you can maybe make a move, slide up if you want, an Xavier Legette, another one of these wide receivers. There's a lot. There's going to be some even into round 3 that you're going to feel good about.
There are first-round wide receiver talents. Kid out of North Carolina, Trey Watkins. Sorry, forget his name. There was one more too, but Legette is a great option. There are guys who should go in the first round, but because there's so many good wide receivers, including LSU just has two.
Right.
Just two top 10 quality wide receivers. Those guys are going to slide. They're just there's too many good wide receivers for there not to be a slide. Whereas you look at offensive line and there's a big middle class dearth to where, maybe you're overdrafting Rosengarten at 99. I would rather be safe than sorry at that position with the need that you have there. You have other needs.
Agreed.
Cornerback, defensive tackle. I mean, as you laid it out, I think as I did it too. You need a cornerback. You need a defensive tackle. You need those. You have to have somebody, especially at corner. If you want to do it early with Kool-Aid McKinstry, go to town. If you want to do it in the second round, go to town. But you're not getting out of the second round without a corner on your roster. Somebody that you can at least throw into the mix. You need another defensive tackle. And then I think the fan base, is a little off kilter on a lot of stuff. But they're right about this. You need a third tackle. If for just this year you need a swing quality tackle, because you're not signing one. You're not signing one. And you saw a lot of teams around the NFL this past year signing dudes off the street to play right tackle for them. And that could be the 49ers if they don't find a guy that they really like. And they could trade up and get that guy. Or you wait around and you take a guy like Rosengarten, who I think has as much upside as any of those sub top 18, top 15 offensive linemen, and you give him the time that he needs, and then you're cooking. But don't wait until day 3 to find that tackle, because now you got to take 3 of them.
Right, and then there's interior offensive linemen who you're still going to like. Those guys, as much as the position's increasing in value, it's still not where it is in the draft. They're going to have some options in round 4, and you can move up. You got a bunch of picks that you're going to want to package and move up.
Totally.
I think in an ideal world, you trade Deebo Samuel for a first rounder, and then you can take
Baltimore
a
would give up the first rounder, because I actually got a lot of pushback initially when the rumor came out. I had my people, and I asked around, and they go, "Yeah, I think you can get a first rounder for him, because the contract is Niners going to hold on to a lot of it in the void years, and this is you'd be trading him to another team that needs him today."
Right.
Which I don't know why you would trade for him.
Right. He would cost, I think, $21 million next year to whichever team is acquiring him.
It's a post June 1 thing too, and that's kind of the kicker here.
You could do it before. What I'm saying is, you could do it before June 1st. You would only save $7 million instead of a ton. But there's an argument that, I don't think this is the way they're going to go. No. Because I think they still think Deebo's got a lot left in the tank.
There's also a message to the team there.
Right. But I'm just saying, if somebody gives you a first round pick, you can go get a tackle of the future. You can make a bunch of moves where you go get a stellar wide receiver. That was a bad rep for Rosengarten. That's the only one I pulled up.
The all-22.
I'm just saying, that is enticing to me. And you're only saving $7 million. You're eating a lot of money. You're eating $21 million.
You're paying for a first-round draft pick in that case.
Right. But might that be worth it? I don't know.
Might be. It's something to think about. We'll get into all the ideal positions, like where we want the Niners to be trade-wise, what picks they should have next week. Looking forward to that immensely. But I'll tell you this, Jake. I think we're 2 for 2 in our 3. I love both of these mock drafts.
I do too.
I really liked mine. I think you are less bullish on yours than I am on yours. I like yours a lot more. I'm not the biggest Fisk guy, because 31 and your number 1 trade is Motor, that. It's a little unsettling.
Right.
A little unsettling that he
I don't love him at 31 either. In an ideal world, I would trade down and get him.
But Renardo Green makes a lot of sense to me. I love that at 63. I think that's right on the money. I think it's right on the money. And I think Rosengarten at 99 is right on the money too, because I would rather be 10 picks ahead than 10 picks too late. And then now you're having to trade up. Now you're having
when
to
try and get the perfect value for a player, you're like, he's here. Well, I should wait.
Worry about that in round 1 when you get that 5th-year option, and maybe worry about it in round 2. round 3 and beyond, I don't give that much of a shit.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Anything else you want to add for the people out there, Jake?
Just stick with us. If you have anything, I would say if you have anything you want us to talk about, any questions,
Yeah.
send them our way.
Yeah,
I
leave a
appreciate.
comment below. We see all that.
Yep,
And we'll hit it up on the next show because we will have a little bit of
agreed.
space in the next show because I don't think free agency is going to wrap up anytime soon. I think teams are going to drag
Yeah,
it out Blake Snell style. And
especially with safeties.
the safety thing is weird.
Weird
No, it
slow
isn't.
market.
It's been the case. It's been the case for years, regardless. Yeah, next show we might even just do like a mailbag on top of it. And
Yeah,
we can just get in on it. So if you want, you can send us an email. What is it? Dieter and Jake and Dieter at gmail.com.
yeah, something like that.
We'll
Dieter and
put
Jake.
it in the description on this on
Yes,
YouTube and the podcast. You can
that
hit
way
us
you
up
don't have
on
to just blindly type it in.
X and Twitter. We'll see those comments. Well, at least Jake will. And yeah, hit us up with a comment on this video if you want us to talk about something next week. We'll be happy to talk about it. Let's call it a mailbag, and if that doesn't materialize, we'll just make up our own questions because they'll be pretty good too. Jake,
That's right.
good shit, man. Let's do it again next week.
Let's do it.